This is the 1980s Singer 6212C. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about machine embroidery. When I was doing the Red Cross with the 1952-1591 and the Bishop Sewing Systems hand crank, I started to naturally fall into a V shape. And then I did a dish towel, and I've been experimenting and learning and seeing what's comfortable, what's not comfortable. Now these machines, typical machines, like the one in front of me, like my brother from 2015 and 2016, they have, your basic machines have zigzag straight stitch. This one has 4 additional stitches. They do buttonholes. I had already checked this out earlier today with the feed dog cover plate, which is plastic, and this is a side clamping Singer, low shank, so a lot of attachments and inexpensive darning feet will fit it. So usually in the manuals they talk about monogramming or satin stitch, and my V stitch that I found in the that I was doing with the 1591 was not really a zigzag, but it was almost feathering a wide area. But when you think about modern machines, first of all, the to be accessible for some disabilities, these come with what we call a foot pedal, which is really a motor controller. And over there you see it on the right of the machine, and it can also be used by your hand. I just recently posted a video about how they can overheat. And I found an electronic replacement for this machine for only $15. I haven't bought it yet, but there is an option that's not a hand crank, but it is the same idea where you're powering it with one hand and guiding the fabric with the other. But now, instead of putting on the darning plate, the feed dog cover plate, and an embroidery foot or taking this foot off, I want you to think about how machine embroidery with a very simple machine has been right in front of us all the time. And I'm surprised nobody has mentioned this to me. If you look at a flag patch, like I have right here, and you turn your image this way, you have a zigzag satin stitch. Now, if you blend it in by moving the fabric back and forth, perhaps by putting a feed dog cover plate on, then you'd be doing the same thing I was doing when I worked this way and did V stitches. So there is the modern way to do machine embroidery without spending $1 million for an embroidery machine, zigzag. So here is a penciled Red Cross that I was working this way, and I would work this way again if I put the feed dog cover plate on and an embroidery foot. If I turn it this way and line it up and just zigzag rows, I'm doing machine embroidery. It's very simple. Anybody can do it. I'm sure you can adapt it to different designs. It's probably what the very fancy, expensive machines are based on, but I haven't looked into them, so I can't say that. I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to do maybe 2 rows, and we'll see how it works. What I'm thinking about with the quilts that I have to do, I have fabric in case I decide to applique a Red Cross in fabric. I also can do them the way I did them on the 1591. If I do them on this way, here's a huge advantage. This is 2 layers of cross-stitch fabric. But if I have 2 layers of muslin and batting in the middle and do a satin stitch, it's quilting in zigzag, but it's also machine embroidery. So let me put the camera down. And I'm going to use this as a foot pedal. I mean, you don't have a treadle, you don't have a hand crank, but you do have either foot or hand control, and it would just be a matter of getting used to it. So I have the machine set at the second zigzag length from the left, and the stitch length on 2.5, and the stitch selector is on number 3, which is zigzag. I have the tension on 3. I have red cotton thread. I had the presser foot off earlier, so I just want to make sure I have it on there tightly. Okay, so I want a smaller I could layer it like I've been doing, but I would rather have a tighter stitch. You really want to do a satin stitch. Now, for some reason, either I went crooked. Look at that. I went very crooked. This is really light pencil. And, boy, that's almost funny. But let's go back anyway. Now I could tighten that up just a little bit more, but I don't necessarily have to. It's gonna, if I do red top thread and red bottom thread, it's gonna take a lot of thread, especially if I do 6-inch big motifs. But like the dish towels I was doing, I could have done the lips in zigzag. Now the only thing you have to watch out for like I broke a bobbin thread. What you have to watch out for is just that. What happens is if you try to go over it, and I've run into this with other machines in zigzag, if you try to go over a very thick area, you might have a bobbin issue. The 237 has done that to me before. Now with smooth quilting cottons, that probably wouldn't happen. So now, because I went crooked the first time, I can just fill in where I need to get it straight again. Now, here's why I'm doing this, even if I'm having problems with this right now. I think this is the thread. This is a vintage cotton thread, and I think the thread is, I'm hitting a lump on the back and the thread is breaking. But you can see that? It's not bad. I haven't fiddled with it to get the perfect stitch. The thread is a vintage thread that's breaking. But this really leads me back to, especially if I use my left foot on the foot pedal, in my case, the White Family Rotary that I just got a zigzagger for. Now, the vintage zigzag attachments could now be used without all the darning plates and the darning feet and everything. You could use a regular vintage zigzag attachment, and you don't need to bother with the cams, just a regular zigzag stitch, and you could be, well, you could do monogramming, but you could be doing machine embroidery. So that is currently in a treadle, and so I could be using my left leg to treadle and a zigzagger, and I could be doing the same project on the White Family Rotary. So on this, what I would know from this experience is don't try to go over an area you've already covered in. But you can see how much easier this is. I don't have to have a hoop. I can have batting in the fabric if I want. I could probably use different fabrics. And, I mean, from a sewing perspective, this is from the 1980s, but it's also in the, kind of in the modern day, where I can get a snap-on adapter and all kinds of snap-on feet for this. So you don't have to have a vintage one, a vintage machine, or a fancy embroidery machine to get a similar effect and doing machine embroidery. So in my case, I have now several choices, and at some point I'm going to do this with the White Family Rotary and get a tight stitch and do the same thing. This is how they do it commercially. If I got that stitch really tight, I could even be doing flags. But this, it's not perfect, but it's workable. And it's probably a lot more accessible for more people, because not everybody has antique machines.